The Unfiltered Human on the Fringe episode 13, The Gift in the Wound Rewriting Your Origin Story. You're listening to The Unfiltered Human on the Fringe, a space where the raw edges of human experience meet the quiet power of truth. I'm James Miller, and in this third episode of our integration arc, we're stepping into a space that many of us avoid, the story of where we come from. This episode is about origin stories, the silent scripts we inherit, the wounds we carry, and the way those early imprints continue to shape the lives we live. It's easy to look back and feel trapped by the past. The pain, the dysfunction, the unmet needs, they can feel like sentences handed down before we even had words. But what if they weren't life sentences? What if they were invitations? This episode explores how we can reframe our wounds, not as definitions of who we are, but as turning points in the story of who we're becoming. We'll explore how childhood experiences shape our self-concept and emotional patterns. What does it mean to differentiate your true self from the adapted self? How narrative therapy can help us reclaim authorship of our lives? And why the wound itself often contains the key to transformation. If you've ever felt like your past is something to escape, this one's for you. Let's begin. The story I inherited, uncovering the invisible script theme, early imprints and unconscious identity. Our sense of self is shaped long before we realize we're constructing one. Childhood isn't just a phase, it's where we learn what love feels like, what safety costs, and what version of ourselves gets approval. These silent lessons become internal scripts we carry into adulthood, often without ever questioning who wrote them. Attributes, early conditioning, identity formation, unconscious beliefs. This section invites you to revisit your early environment with compassionate clarity, not to blame, but to understand. We explore how family dynamics, emotional atmospheres, and childhood roles shaped your identity, and how those patterns might still be directing your life from behind the scenes. Abandonment of self. Every origin story starts in a house with unspoken rules. Maybe you were the peacemaker, the achiever, the emotional one, the invisible one. Maybe you were taught that love is earned through obedience, or that emotions are dangerous, or that your worth is in how useful you are. These weren't lessons taught in words. They were learned through tone, body language, silence, and chaos. And over time, you became the version of yourself that best survived the environment you were in. That version was smart, necessary, but it wasn't the whole you. This part is about going back, not to relive pain, but to understand the blueprint. Because if you never examine the script, you'll keep playing the part. Personal reflection. When I look back, I don't remember anyone telling me who to be, but I felt it all the time. I felt the pressure to be capable, to be helpful, not much needed. I learned early on that strength meant silence, that vulnerability was inconvenient, and that if I wanted connection, I had to be easy to love. So I became that version, the high-functioning, emotionally contained, endlessly accommodating one. It wasn't fake, but it wasn't free either. Now I can see that a lot of my adult behaviors weren't conscious choices. They were inherited strategies. I wasn't choosing who I was. I was replaying what once kept me safe. And the work of healing, for me, has been about interrupting that script, about asking who I am without the performance. Psychological insight, inner child theory, and the adapted self. In both psychodynamic and trauma-informed models, the concept of the inner child and refers to the emotional self that formed in response to early experiences. When that child faces neglect, shame, or inconsistency, they develop adaptive behaviors to stay connected, accepted, or protected. These behaviors, perfectionism, avoidance, people-pleasing, and hyper-independence, become the foundations of the adapted self. The problem arises when these adaptations persist long after the threat is gone. We continue acting from the wounds of a child, but within the context of adult relationships. Awareness is the first step toward integration. Insight prompt. What roles did you play in your family or early environment? What beliefs did you absorb about love, safety, or worth? Where do those beliefs still echo in your life today? Theory in action prompt. Practice. The inherited script inventory. Take a blank page. Draw 2 columns. Label 1, what I learned. Label the other, is it still true? In the first column, list statements or feelings that shaped your early identity, e.g., emotions make things worse. I have to earn love. I need to be useful to be safe. In the second column, challenge those beliefs. Ask, who gave me this message? Does it still serve me? What do I want to believe instead? Circle one belief you're ready to rewrite. The mirror of memory, when the past feels like the present theme, emotional flashbacks and narrative looping sometimes are not reacting to the moment. We're reacting to a memory the body hasn't released. Old emotional imprints can hijack present day situations, making it feel like history is repeating. Healing begins with recognizing when we're in a loop and reclaiming authorship from inside the moment. Attributes, emotional flashbacks, somatic recall, present moment awareness. This section explores how our nervous system can carry unresolved memories that surface as intense emotional states in the present. These emotional echoes, often mistaken for current truth, are the body's way of completing unfinished stories. By bringing awareness to when we're reacting from the past, we begin the work of disentangling memory from reality. Inner voice. There were moments when I'd be having a calm conversation, and suddenly I'd feel like a child again, defensive, flooded, misunderstood. The other person hadn't changed tone. They hadn't said anything cruel. But something in me panicked. That's what a narrative loop feels like. Like your body remembering something your mind can't name fast enough. It's not irrational. It's not weakness. It's a sign that something old has been reactivated and wants attention, not shame. The work isn't to judge the reaction. It's to gently ask, is this response about now? Or is this a mirror from then? Personal reflection. There were times I'd completely withdraw in conflict, not because I didn't care, but because I felt emotionally paralyzed. It took me years to realize that withdrawal wasn't my choice. It was my body's safety script. I wasn't in the conversation anymore. I was in a memory. And once I saw that, everything changed. I started recognizing those shifts. I could name them. I could breathe through them. And slowly, I started building a bridge between past and present. That's when I started responding instead of reliving. Psychological insight, emotional flashbacks, and CPSD in complex trauma, emotional flashbacks are common. These are not memories in the form of images or events, they're felt states. You may suddenly feel small, powerless, anxious, ashamed, or angry without a clear trigger. This occurs when the nervous system has stored implicit memories that haven't been integrated. Unlike a panic attack, emotional flashbacks are often misunderstood or masked as overreactions. But when recognized, they become portals to healing. Insight prompt. When was the last time you had a strong emotional reaction that surprised you? What did it feel like in your body? Could it be linked to a familiar pattern from your past? Theory in action prompt. Practice. Name the loop. Next time you feel emotionally activated, pause. Place one hand on your heart and ask, how old do I feel right now? Notice what arises, an age, a memory, a posture. Then speak aloud or journal. This reaction belongs to a younger part of me. I see them. I am here now. This helps reorient the nervous system to the present. The wounded child within listening without fixing theme. Inner child work and reparenting inside every adult who struggles is a child who was never fully heard, seen, or comforted. Healing doesn't mean going back. It means finally offering that child what they never received. Not by blaming the past, but by becoming the person you needed. Attributes: inner child, compassion, self-parenting. This part invites you to meet the younger parts of yourself with kindness instead of critique. We explore how reconnecting with your inner child through writing, imagination, or body awareness opens the door to healing patterns rooted in emotional neglect or unmet needs. This is about giving yourself now what you once lacked. Early layers of life. There's a version of you that still lives in the early moments, the first time you felt abandoned or ashamed or not enough. That child might have learned to hide, to perform, or to harden. But they never disappeared. They just got quiet. Healing is not about revisiting trauma for the sake of pain. It's about revisiting that child with new eyes, eyes that can see them, hold them, and remind them that they were never the problem. This work isn't neat or rational. It's messy, emotional, and intuitive. But it's also where the deepest healing happens. Personal reflection. For a long time, I treated my younger self like an inconvenience. I'd push through emotion. I'd rationalize pain. I thought maturity meant detachment. But there were moments, deep, still moments, where I could feel him. The version of me that just wanted to be held, to be heard without being fixed, to be allowed to feel without shame. Now I make space for him. I write letters to him. I even speak to him out loud. It sounds strange, but it's real. And over time, that internal relationship has softened so many of the hard edges I once carried. Psychological insight, inner child theory and parts work in therapeutic models like IFS, Gestalt, and somatic experiencing, the inner child, is understood as a psychological part, a collection of emotional memories, needs, and behaviors formed in early development. By reconnecting to this part and offering what was missing, empathy, protection, validation, we begin to build internal safety. This process is sometimes called reparenting, becoming the adult your younger self needs. Insight prompt. What did your inner child need most that they didn't receive? How did they try to cope or adapt? How can you offer that unmet need now? Theory in action prompt. Practice. Inner child dialogue. Write a dialogue between you, as you are now, and your younger self. Let them speak first. Don't edit, just listen. You can begin with, I'm here now. I'm listening. What do you want me to know? Offer presence, not correction. Comfort, not advice. You're not here to change them. You're here to honor them. The story beneath the story. Naming the core belief theme, identity scripts, and internal narratives. Every wound carries a message. Not just about what happened, but about what it meant to us. That meaning, often unconscious, becomes the belief that guides our behavior. Identifying it is the first step in rewriting it. Attributes, self-belief, core narrative, meaning-making. We explore the hidden beliefs formed in childhood that quietly shape our adult identity. These beliefs, like I have to earn love or I'm too much, often run beneath the surface until we pause to name and challenge them. Rewriting your origin story starts with understanding the script. Loop cycles. Behind every reaction is a belief. Behind every pattern is a story. It might say, I'm not safe unless I'm in control. I'll be abandoned if I'm vulnerable. I have to earn love. These stories often don't come from conscious thought. They emerge from repeated emotional experiences. But once we name them, we can begin to question them. Naming the story is an act of power, personal reflection. For years, I thought I was bad at relationships. But when I looked closer, I saw the real story. I believed love would always cost me my freedom. I believed that closeness would mean losing myself. I believed I had to perform to be chosen. These beliefs weren't facts, they were echoes. But until I named them, they ran the show. Psychological insight. Cognitive schemas are mental structures that help us interpret the world. When formed in childhood through repeated experience, they can become core beliefs, assumptions about ourselves, others, and life. These beliefs often lie beneath surface behaviors. Uncovering them helps bring the unconscious into conscious awareness, a key goal of most depth therapies. Insight prompt. What belief do you think lives underneath your most difficult emotional reaction? Where did it come from? What new belief are you ready to grow? Theory in action prompt. Practice. The belief reframe. Take one of your current emotional patterns. Ask yourself, what must I believe to keep doing this? Then gently respond. That belief came from a younger version of me, and I honor that. But I don't have to keep living by it. Create a new belief. Keep it simple. Speak it daily. The turning point. Reclaiming the pen theme. Authoring a new identity. When we recognize the story isn't fixed, we reclaim the ability to change it. Rewriting your origin story doesn't erase the pain. It reframes its meaning. This part is about choosing to become the author of your life, even when you didn't choose the beginning. Attributes, empowerment, identity, agency, conscious choice. This part is about reclaiming authorship. We examine how trauma can lock us into fixed roles, and how empowerment begins with recognizing we have a say in who we become. Identity becomes an act of intention rather than inheritance. The adopted scripts. Some of us were handed scripts before we could speak. We learned early on who we needed to be survive, to be loved, or at least to be tolerated. But at some point we have to pause and ask, is this still my story, or is it just a role I never stopped playing? Reclaiming authorship doesn't mean rejecting the past. It means choosing how it shapes the present. Personal reflection. There was a point in my life where I realized I had memorized my story, but I had never questioned it. I could recount the pain, the betrayals, the childhood confusion, but I hadn't thought about what it all meant, or who I'd become as a result. I was telling a story on loop, but it wasn't evolving. The turning point came when I stopped seeing the past as the end of the sentence and started treating it as the beginning of the plot. I realized I had agency. I could change the ending, not by pretending the beginning didn't happen, but by choosing how I interpreted it. That changed everything. Psychological insight, narrative therapy, and identity reformation narrative therapy, pioneered by Michael White and David Epstein, helps individuals externalize problems and see their lives as stories with multiple possible plots. By separating identity from adversity, people gain perspective and agency. This shift allows for reauthoring, rewriting the personal narrative in a way that acknowledges hardship without being defined by it. It moves us from victimhood to meaning-making. Insight prompt. What story have you unconsciously been telling about who you are and where you come from? Where do you sense the opportunity to shift the plot? Theory in action prompt. Write a short scene from your past, but change the ending. Imagine that your present self steps in to help, interrupt, or offer a different path. What changes in how the memory feels? Notice what emotional freedom opens up when you become the author instead of the actor. Becoming who you needed. Making the past sacred theme, meaning making, and embodied healing. We often look back with resentment or regret. But healing asks us to go deeper, to see the past not as a prison, but as the soil that shaped our growth. This part explores how to make peace with what was by becoming who we needed back then. Attributes, wholeness, embodied wisdom, sacred reframing rather than bypassing pain. This section focuses on transforming it. We explore how to view the wound as part of your sacred architecture, something that, when met with presence, becomes a source of wisdom and compassion rather than shame. The embodied return to self. We sometimes think healing is about escaping who we were, but often it's about returning to the parts of ourselves that were left behind, silenced and ignored. Becoming who we need isn't a metaphor, it's an embodied practice. It means showing up for yourself now in all the ways no one showed up back then. And in doing so, rewriting not the facts, but the meaning of the story. Personal reflection. There's a moment I return to in memory where I felt completely alone, not just physically, but emotionally invisible. I used to revisit it with bitterness, wondering why no one showed up for me. But something shifted the day I asked myself, who did I become because of that moment? And more powerfully, who do I get to be now because I survived it? I realized I could become the person I needed back then. Every time I honor my needs, hold space for someone else, or speak the truth I once silenced, I'm reparenting that version of me. I'm rewriting the past by living differently now. Psychological insight, post-traumatic growth, and the reparenting model research on post-traumatic growth suggests that some individuals experience deep psychological development after adversity, including shifts in life appreciation, personal strength, and relationships. When combined with reparenting practices, this growth becomes conscious. Reparenting involves treating yourself with the emotional care you wish you'd received, reinforcing new neural pathways of safety and connection. Insight prompt. Who did you need when you were younger that you didn't have? What parts of yourself now reflect those missing qualities? Theory in action prompt. Spend minutes each morning this week writing a letter to your younger self, offering the words, compassion, or protection you needed then. Read it back aloud and notice what shifts in your body and self-concept. Integration. Rewriting doesn't mean erasing theme. Owning the story without being owned by it. To rewrite your origin story doesn't mean erasing what happened. It means reclaiming how it lives inside you. You are allowed to remember and still move forward. To honor your pain and still create joy. You are the author now, and you always were. Attributes. Integration, ownership, emotional continuity. To integrate is to include. In this final part, we look at how to carry your story without being defined by it. Healing becomes less about moving on and more about moving forward, whole, conscious, and unafraid to bring all of yourself with you. The integrated future. Some stories stay open-ended, and that's okay. Healing doesn't always mean closure. It often means making peace with the mystery, the complexity, the parts that never got a clean resolution. When we stop waiting for a better past, we can start living a more honest present. That's integration, that's freedom, personal reflection. For a long time, I thought healing would make me forget. That integration meant finally getting over it, or that I'd wake up one day and not care anymore. But I've learned that wholeness isn't the absence of memory, it's the presence of peace. I still remember the pain, I still carry the stories, but now they live alongside my growth, not in place of it. The wound didn't disappear, it just stopped bleeding. And in its place, something else is growing: perspective, strength, and a strange kind of grace. Psychological insight, internal coherence, and narrative completion psychologists have long observed that healing depends not just on what we experience, but how we organize that experience. Internal coherence, the ability to tell a clear, honest, and compassionate story about your past, is associated with greater emotional resilience. When the narrative is incomplete, we carry fragmentation. Integration is the process of giving the story its rightful place in your larger whole. Insight prompt: what parts of your story still feel fragmented or unfinished? What might it look like to integrate them with compassion instead of control? Theory in action prompt: create a timeline of significant emotional events in your life from childhood to now. Then beside each, write what it taught you. You're not erasing the pain, you're completing the arc. This is the practice of wholeness. Closing the chapter, not the book. Rewriting your origin story isn't about denial. It's about dignity. The dignity to choose how your past shapes your present and how your truth gets told from here on. You don't have to let go of the memory to move forward. You just need to stop letting it hold the pen. Integration means honoring the pain while refusing to be defined by it. It means walking with your story, not dragging it like a burden. There is no perfect narrative, no clean ending, but there is power in owning the one you've lived, and even more power in realizing the next chapter is still unwritten. In the next episode, we move into the often uncomfortable, deeply honest space of wholeness, not the shiny, flawless version we're sold, but the real one. In Wholeness Isn't Perfect, Embracing the Messy Middle, we'll explore what it means to live with contradiction, emotional complexity, and parts of ourselves we still don't fully understand. Because healing isn't the end of feeling, it's the beginning of inclusion. You're not broken, you're becoming. This has been the Unfiltered Human on the Fringe. If this episode stirred something in you, insight, discomfort, curiosity, don't rush to fix it. Sit with it. Let it shape you. That's where the real change begins. Until next time, stay grounded, stay honest, and keep walking toward the version of you that remembers you were always the writer. James Miller. If you found value in today's episode, you may also be interested in my broader project, The Inversiverse, a series exploring the hidden architecture of perception, identity, control, and consciousness. Across 20 episodes, The Inversiverse dissects indoctrination, language, media manipulation, dark psychology, belief systems, and the evolution of self in the digital age. You can find all episodes of The Inversiverse on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, and Substack by searching this place called Earth. These ideas aren't shared to convince you, but to invite you to think, feel, and perceive more consciously in a world designed to keep you distracted. Overview of The Inversiverse: a journey through the mirrors of mind, culture, and control. Episodes 1 to 3 introduce foundational ideas around indoctrination, perception, and manipulation. Episode 4 explores how language, symbols, and cultural norms are used to shape thought. Episode 5 investigates control systems, media narratives, and the illusion of choice. Episodes 6 to 7 dives into collective belief structures and the psychology of mass behavior. Episode 8 focuses on marketing, control theory, game theory, and critical thinking. Episode 9 covers love, relationships, human mating, gender dynamics, and red-blue pill ideologies. Episode 10 unpacks dark psychology, the occult, Satanism, and the dark triad personality types. Episode 11 The Simulated Self examines identity, ego, and the rise of post-human consciousness. Episode 12 The Spell of the Mind inquires into language, illusion, and physiology of thought. Episode 13 Conscious Seduction journeys through persuasion, propaganda, and the unseen forces of the mind. Episode 14. The Myth of Sanity sheds light on madness, genius, and the edge of perception. Episode 15. The Algorithmic Mind probes influence, identity, and invisible architects. Episode 16. The Noise of Knowing reveals overload, obsession, and the age of infinite information. Episode 17. Belief Machines delves further into language, desire, and the engine of reality. Episode 18. Submerged Signals examines how the unseen shapes the self. Episode 19. The Alchemy Within traces food, frequency, and the forgotten intelligence of the body. Episode 20. Encoded Flesh scrutinizes and opens up to the forgotten language of the body, DNA, and biological consciousness.